After a short break, we are back with more episodes of the pod. We have a very special one today. We're throwing it all the way back to 1967 to talk about Cool Hand Luke. And we're also welcoming back former guest Ben Smith from the Paul Blart episode. Ben has written and directed his own short film titled Mountain Ben that we're going to be discussing for the first 30 minutes or so of this episode. Feel free to listen to the episode without having seen it, or click the link in the description to go check out Mountain Ben. It's wild. It's all over the place. It's really unique. And I think this is an interesting conversation with him just about creative process and what he was trying to do with it. And it'd be cool to be able to do more of this moving forward on the podcast. We took a short break, but we're back with a lot of fun stuff. We're going to have another episode in the coming days with our best of 2024 right on the heels of the Oscars. And I think we've got a really fun discussion ahead of us. Ben is always a great person to talk to. Could listen to the stories he has to tell all night.
Who the hell made this?
Two really interesting films today. And the first one is a film that was written and directed by you yourself, Ben Smith, Benny Franklin Films. You know, for the people that are watching this video who maybe haven't seen this, it's going to be linked in the description. You can listen to this whole conversation if you haven't seen it. If you want to pause it here, go watch the 24-minute movie.
It's a movie within a movie, almost.
Right.
True.
Well, I wanted to start with that. There's a lot of great movies within movies, TV shows within TV shows. I was watching Twin Peaks season 1 and season 2 a couple weeks ago. And then, of course, David Lynch passed away. But in the first season of that show, there's this whole like soap opera that's made up, Imitation to Love, that runs throughout the course of that. And even in 30 Rock, there's a million different TV shows and movies within movies. I found a website called Nestflix that you can look up a movie or a TV show and it will like give you all the made up kind of creations within that.
Another one that I've seen recently that it reminds me of is Grand Budapest Hotel with Wes Anderson, where
Asteroid City as well. I mean, especially is
a lot of Wes. He likes to do that
hat
a
on a
lot.
hat.
Yeah, so I like the meta-ness of, you're introduced to this character, and I mean, my first thought is like, oh, this is gonna be like the main character we hang with. But then like that first snap where it goes to kind of the show he's watching. I just really like that from a filmmaking perspective for sure.
So you made this thing, Ben. Tell us about it. A show within a show. What is Mountain Ben to you? What does it mean to you? How did it come to be?
They both are characters that evolved from my own experience. And not as much, they're not really, neither one of them are me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the old man is me moving back home after college and listening to the 30 different noises my dad would make.
The loud breathing. Yeah.
Like, after a few months of that, you have to find an outlet to express other than freaking out. And I remember showing it to him, and he looked at it, and he kind of had a blank stare on his face for a second. And then he let it go away for a few minutes, and then he looked at me and said, "Is that supposed to be me?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." And that's what it's like living with you. And then Mountain Ben's based off this guy. His real name's Jacob Barnes, but he had kind of lured his way into Jimmy, and then I lured him into Jimmy the Bug Man.
Executive producer Jimmy Bugs.
Yes, he's an exterminator. Well, he didn't like Jimmy the Bug Man because it was offensive to him. So I had to change it to Jimmy Bugs. And I don't think he's as bad as Mountain Ben, maybe, but I've been in scenarios where I've been in an unwelcome environment, I suppose. Maybe because of women too, you stay the night and then it's just kind of weird in the morning. You hear all these voices you've never heard before. But imagine taking that to the next step to where she leaves. I mean, like you don't have enough strength to leave, I guess maybe, or you come out and then you start getting kind of involved in this other life because you didn't have anything to do that day. I don't know. Or you're really just waiting for her and trusting her word. She'll be back in 4 hours. But this guy's there. So then you just kind of see what's going to happen. So the story is really about the boyfriend. And Mountain Ben isn't as much the main character's the story's main character, but I guess what you're really digesting the whole time.
I wanted to throw over to Kody just because, this was his first time watching this. I checked out previously, and I wanted to kind of just get his thoughts and let him kind of ask you a question or two, maybe see what he.
Yeah, let's see what you got going.
Yeah, and I do like breaking down kind of, short films like this. If you haven't seen our contact list breakdown, I'll shout out Corbin off the bat here. Oh, and also Ben he had a cameo in that too. So big shout out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You didn't give me enough time. I thought I was going to get at least 10 seconds, but you got me in 5.
The credit was what, Naked Man, I think? It was something like that. Shout out.
I still wonder what happened to that bathrobe. I can't find
it. But I was saying, I like the melding of different styles when I can kind of pick and choose of oh, maybe this was the inspiration here, this is inspiration there. So I want to go through a few of those. Corbin already mentioned one with the Wes Anderson movie within a movie. I think the most obvious one is there's a few feet shot in here, which I wanted to ask you. So I feel like the first one isn't as bad. Obviously, the toenails I think is funny, but then the second one with the horror dream sequence, it's flashing back and forth as well. First off, is that Tarantino inspired? And then what's just your thought process on the flashes? It's not.
I don't have a foot fetish. I have a foot interest, and I feel like feet at one point were used like hands, they had the same flexibility. And then we take advantage of it.
We lost that.
Yeah, it's something that
it's like de-evolution. It's a reverse. Yes. And you're trying to examine that through the film.
Well, I just started bringing it up in conversation sometimes, and people would get weirded out. So yeah, that's another thing that I like to punch in. That's my own opinion. That's a little underestimated, and everyone thinks it's kind of weird.
The other specific shot too that was early on was and I thought it was super intense, was the brushing of the teeth, almost like a Kubrick-esque stare. But I would ask, was that hard to film as well? I feel like I would break with that. And what was your inspiration for that?
The inspiration was Martin Scorsese's shaving movie that he did, where the guy's shaving and then he starts bleeding. All of the old man stuff I did by myself at 5 p.m. when no one was at my parents' house. So everything was staged and set up. I did a shot list, storyboard the day before. So it really wasn't hard to film anything. And I can kind of just snap into that mode really quick. I used the Van Man's tooth powder. That's why it looks like that. To get that full effect, I wanted to do the black and white just to kind of do a tone difference between the two.
Shout out to The Big Shave. This is one of Martin Scorsese's early shorts.
Is that a Criterion classic?
Yeah, man. Criterion. It's got 5 of his movies. American Boy, which is another good one. The whole Pulp Fiction adrenaline scene is just taken from the interview that is in that movie, of course. Tarantino overstealing. What genre? Where do you try? I don't want you to have to box yourself in, but what do you think of this? Is there a genre to this? And also just as a filmmaking style, is this, do you believe in Dogma 95 or is this, mumblecore? What is Mountain Bend to you?
I couldn't label it. I mean, the genre is really what my brain is. I wanted to do a dramatic, weird thing that someone had never seen before. And I feel like Mountain Bend is definitely a film that no one has seen before, especially getting the psychedelic stuff into it. But I mean, it was kind of a melting pot of just, I threw it together probably in a month. I was going to try to make a movie that the goal was to make the blue collar worker cry. I wanted to show how distraught some blue collar people's lives are, just with all these things going on, with all these relationships they hold. And I lost the location for it. So in a fit of rage, Mountain Bend starts to get developed at 3 p.m. after work for a few weeks, sitting in the hot sun, drinking a few beers and smoking some Black and Milder cigarettes. Just I would let the sun beat down on me was my goal, because I pretty much became Mountain Bend.
Based on a true story is a credit in this film.
Well, I remember them making jokes that I was going to go live under the bridge because my hair was all the way down to here. I was letting my beard grow out. And The genre, I guess, if you want to keep it simple, comedy is kind of where I want to put it, but I don't know how much it really is.
It starts off super comedic. Some you have even the situational comedy with, like you said, the roommate and waking up the next day and this weird roommate's there. But obviously, I mean, with that dream sequence, I think it does take a big tonal shift. At least for me, I feel like that scene, like it is super creepy and jarring. I feel like when you hit that point. And then even when we were talking about the feet shot, like you just laying out in the grass, I don't know, it just gives me like midsummer vibes with the way it was shot too. So I think the differing tones is something I enjoyed about it for
Well,
sure.
we have the different acts, the different act structure of the film, and of course, one
Yeah.
of them is the Benadryl dream, which to me is the most psychedelic, like Kody talks about. So I really want to get into that. Where does that stuff come from for you?
I went through a period of time where I was taking two Benadryls and two melatonins every night. It didn't really do anything except make me pass out, and then I'd wake up kind of sweaty. But I
Mm.
never really got much effect from it, like this whole Hat Man thing people talk about, the Hat Man. I'd make jokes about the Hat Man, but I've never met him, and I don't really know if I want to. That might be too far. But I really haven't explored too many things other than just what I was naturally gifted with the craziness, And this scene was definitely inspired by the Big Lebowski scene when he's in the bowling ball and Kenny Rogers just dropped in comes on. We played Kenny Rogers just dropped in the entire time we did it as inspiration. I was able to use the sound guy I talked about earlier. His name's Nate Irwin. I call him Nautical Nate Irwin. He's a Purdue graduate too. And me and him working together, really we were able to get the music we wanted, and he's able to match some stuff. I can't remember. I think he took Dire Straits out for the music in that psychedelic scene, a part of it. But he made it at a point to where that I couldn't have done that. I wanted to use real music, but the copyright stuff, the psychedelic stuff, it was the Big Lebowski, and then with the Hat Man, he was inspired by the Benadryl Hat Man, but I played a lot off of Dr. Caligari for for the way that scene was shot with his sleeping man, and then
Yeah.
my brother was a little upset that I made him do that as he looks back on it, that I put him in the makeup and stuff. But I mean, I made a kid put face paint on and look like a clown, and I took pictures for him for my black and white photography class. So that was when I first started playing with that type of stuff. And I mean, you could do a lot with it.
I think the coolest thing is just what you're talking about with the iteration, and maybe this starts with one thing that fails or turns into something else, or you're working on something for a black and white photography class, and then that inspires another moment. And then even I know you've I've got it right here. You've released a coloring book, which I've bought.
I was wondering if we were going to talk about
There's a
that.
lot of imagery in here. I have done a little bit of coloring here. But yeah,
It's funny that you did the clown. That was inspired by the black and white clown.
the Brian's Mind coloring book. Is this still available?
It is. It's still on there. I redid the cover, and by redid I mean I changed a few words, and I think maybe the yellow's blue now, but that's
But
about
there's
it.
some of that imagery in this movie as well near the end, which I wanted to definitely call out. Link in the description,
Well, you remember Brendan Gorman?
of course.
He started working
The
at the
hook.
golf course. That was a whole. That was funny too. And I remember talking to him one day, and I was like, I think I'm going to make a coloring book. He's, oh, no, you're not. And I was like, yeah. And it started with King Crazy Corns, who's in the Mountain Bend movie. He was the first drawing that I put in there. And then through a year, I was able to develop that. I probably have close to 100, 150 just doodles like that now.
Yeah, another thing, and this is completely random, but one of my favorite scenes is the banana scene for sure. I'm just
That's Brendan. That's Brendan Gorman. So that's who we're talking
Oh,
about.
gotcha. Okay. I didn't even know that was.
Yeah,
That's funny.
Brendan's topic of conversation right now.
But I'm not a big banana guy myself. I despise them. So I just wanted to hear your general thoughts. Do you just like hate them in general, or is it just like a funny thing you wanted to do?
For a long time, I did. I'm starting to get into them now.
Oh wow.
I don't know why I picked a banana, just maybe the simplicity of it, I guess.
I'm curious. The banana, obviously iconic through time. A lot of sexual innuendos going on. There's a scene right before that, the kind of confrontation between our lead character played by Jacob Sullivan and Benny Franklin,
Uh,
where he's asking about some of his kind of sexual desires, the
okay.
things he does in bed. I do like your response in that moment where you say, I like TV, which really reminded me of a movie that was released this past year. I saw The TV Glow, which kind of has a similar echoing of dialogue. So is the banana a continuation of that, or what's going on with that kind of
No,
intense?
no,
Uh,
it has nothing to do with it, honestly. I'm just curious that I've seen that. When he says I like TV, it's I want to try to embarrass you as much as I can, and then I'm not going to give you anything back. He's pretty much amusing himself the entire time.
mm.
And I go back and forth with those two sentences, whether I should have done that or not. I feel like it completely kind of changes it for some people. But I remember like talking to my parents, they're like, "You got to take that out if you're applying to job. You can't be promoting this." And it says you have those two questions in it. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm trying to do things that catch people off guard. And when I showed an 86-year-old grandpa that, he was definitely caught off guard with those two questions.
That's awesome. Another thing I wanted to ask too, just like the character development between the two leads. And shout out the co-lead. He looks like Andrew Barth Feldman from No Hard Feelings. Shout out to that.
Shout out to
But
Jacob.
yeah, the dynamic at the end, I wonder your thoughts on because I like what you said earlier about making the blue collar worker more vulnerable or put them in a vulnerable spotlight.
Mountain Ben's basically a failed blue collar worker. Maybe not failed, but he fits the image of that. His upbringing probably could have been that, but he wants to be an artist. At the end of the day, he's kind of a sloppy, disorganized man who really says whatever he wants, while Jacob's character is very reserved and laid. He's kind of uptight, not laid back. But Jacob would work in an office, and Mountain Ben would be the guy on the back of the trash truck, if that adds up to that. I like doing so much work with Jacob because I could bully him. I'm sure he's gonna watch this, but
A former guest of the pod, Jacob Sullivan, of course. We've
Yeah,
had him on the Napoleon Dynamite
Napoleon
episode.
Dynamite episode. Yeah.
it's a good yin and yang going on with Jacob to where you have enough of a hero and an enemy at the same time with him. I think you can bounce back and forth between the awkwardness and the craziness. And he's pretty good with his expressions. I always tried to see how far I could push him on some things.
I like that. So the bowling translates to real life too.
He plays into it well. He knows how to make the faces to get the emotions out. He really goes into the Charlie Chaplin mode. But the biggest thing for me was I couldn't find people to be these characters I could come up with, so I just have to do it myself.
So you've got to be him.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd love to do a few movies where I could find someone that could do this outrageous shit and I could just sit back and really direct them. But maybe I haven't attempted that yet either. But for me to be able to act in my own film, it's my entire world that I can create. And I can make this whole story up in my head and write it down, and I can make it all play out that exact way. Or I tried not to pinpoint it so much to where some of the scenes I just leave them open ended and say, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it. And I didn't have any dialogue ready. I had two cameras rolling at all times because I'm not a fan of the one camera and do the scene over and over again from different angles. I want to do it once or twice or three times and just keep it rolling on both ends and be able to get what I can get. And I take that from doing the live sports to where I can just ping pong back and forth between stuff. I wouldn't mind directing with a switcher or editing with a switcher and just have multiple, like a big station, have multiple things going back and forth. But that was my mentality for, I guess, the cinematography or even really the directing, just to be able to keep it as loose and raw and real as possible. And for me, that wasn't that hard, especially when you're just sitting there and all of a sudden you pull a red pepper out and you start eating it in front of these guys before we even start filming. That just sets the tone for that scene right there. I had probably three of them and I went through, I think, all three of them that day. But
So you were eating the red
It's awesome.
peppers for real. Obviously, the movie we're going to talk about here shortly, Cool Hand Luke, a lot of eggs eaten for real. Were you smoking the cigarettes? Were they real cigarettes? Because I know when we filmed Colby's
Oh yeah.
movie, who was producer on this film, also starred Jacob. There was a lot of fake cigarettes smoked in the production of that. What was going on there? You need to break it down.
No, they were real cigarettes. And at first, I just wanted to do the interpretation of the bee coming down to sting me. And then I was like, well, I kind of want to do this overhead shot to where it spins down on me.
Was the bee stock? Where'd the bee come from?
It took me forever to get that. I finally put that in 2 or 3 months after I made the movie, and I was sitting on I had hunted bees for a few days. Like I'd go out for an hour and rub sugar water on my leg or something, or rub honey on my leg, and just try to get an insert shot of a bee. And finally, one day they were swarming me, and I was able to just get my phone out. That it was with my phone too, so it doesn't look as good. That's why it's very quickly, but I was finally able to get a sweat bee. I didn't have it figured out before that, and I was just hoping eventually to finally get an insert shot. I mean, a lot of the opening stuff is just random stuff I found over time. The shooting the clouds is one of my favorite things that I've ever
I
filmed.
think my favorite shot in the whole is the train and the soybean field, I think it is, and
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
enjoyed a lot of the scenery stuff that you're.
I had that in my notes. Literally, that is my favorite shot, easily. Like that took me back to like my hometown instantly.
Oh yeah, I was in my hometown waiting for a train on the side of the road, and I thought, oh, maybe this will look good.
Relatable. Like
And
the
it,
slowness of the train too. Just pure nostalgia for me. I love that shot.
A lot of times stuck behind trains like that. Like you said, this comes from kind of a little bit of a deeply dark personal place. There's some intense stuff at the end about being a creative who's told you're not going to make any money with this. I think everybody can relate to those feelings in some way. Whether you watch this movie and you're like, there's a lot of strange shit going on. Like there is deep feelings that I think that this gets to.
it gets to don't judge a book by its cover, and maybe Mountain Ben is a good person at the end of the day, and he's just trying to chase a dream.
And he is a person.
Yeah, we're all people, we all have dreams. And the only thing I didn't like about that scene is I wish I would have had a better actor on the other end. That was my little brother.
Well, it felt personal. I'm going to be honest. Like, it's Mountain Ben's brother. There is something I think raw about that moment.
I tried pissing him off as much as I could.
Brotherly love.
I used to call him Pinky when he was a little kid, and I'm just screaming Pinky at him for 10 minutes straight until I can finally get him there. But I credit him. He did me a favor, especially making him dress up in that makeup. I mean,
It was a great door slam, I thought too. All timer.
he did well, I think. Yeah, his door slam was very aggressive. But he definitely had that image of that clean cut, got it all together brother with the way he was looking that day. I was feeling some of that stuff personally too. Just you talk about your stuff to people and then they just kind of shoot you down. I mean, as we get older, we learn to deal with that, and keep going. But at that time, I was still like trying to come into that moment, I guess, for myself. So I really wanted to show it and just try to put a light in some way on it. He ripped up the original copy of Crazy Corns.
Wow.
That's brutal. I'll say, other than that one shot, my favorite shot, or just my personal favorite, there's wiffle ball bat sighting. I love that. And then
True Indiana stuff.
my least favorite, overexposed Bears Cup. Big Colts fan over here, so that's a miss for me. But other than that, I was a big fan.
Yeah, we both had a bad season. Huh? You had a better
Brutal.
one than I did. But
Not by much.
Hey, Aaron Rodgers to the Colts.
Caleb Williams is
Where's
best
now?
friend with Jim McMahon now. So
The cinematic form is obviously very young, 100 or so years. Something Christopher Nolan talked about in his Oscar speech last year. Like it's cool to see it developing. And as people develop, technology develops, something in modern times, cell phones, the aesthetics of like the digital age are kind of being approached as like very ugly, and something that like film is kind of almost like hitting a blockade against. And like there's like, you hit the early 2000s or maybe even the late 90s where like there's some filmmakers who refuse to make movies past that point, will only go back in history. Brady Corbet, obviously, nominated for the Brutalist this year, is talking about how just the aesthetics of he can't imagine shooting a car or like a Toyota Camry in a movie of his. He's always going to make probably old movies, not make contemporary films. In this movie, you do have cell phone calls. You have to approach that. It's something real. This is set in the present. You choose to do it in an interesting way. What are your thoughts about cell phones, technology in movie, Ben? And why did you choose to do it with kind of like this still imagery?
I hate the way everything's turning. I'm more hands-on. I think I'd have more fun editing with the actual strips in my hand. Feel more in control, I think. A lot of the stuff I do, it's in my hand. All the drawings I've done, it's always been with just a pen and paper, and then but I'm learning how to use the technology to my advantage. Like I'm able to color those in now with solid colors on the computer after I scan them rather than different textures of markers, and it takes 45 minutes. I wanted to get into film to make stories to help people feel better about themselves, even if it was only 90 minutes, or maybe to think differently, the same way that film has done that for me in my life. It's almost been my therapy in a way, or even just creating new ideas or new thoughts of how I want to do even the smallest details, and I'll get into that a little bit more when we get into Koi and Luke. I take something from everything too, like we were talking about earlier, where I take this from that and that from this and put it in. And when it comes to what I'm making, I'm just trying to make something that doesn't leave that feeling in my stomach that somebody else has already done it, unless I want to do that on purpose to almost satirically make fun of it in a way. But I think everything's just so openly right in front of you, and it's only A to B these days. The Coen brothers showed me that you don't have to make film the way that these books that we were reading tell you to make film, or even just the normal story structure. You can make stuff that doesn't have a normal story structure because life doesn't have a normal story structure. There doesn't have to be a happy ending. This Mountain Ben was the first movie I made to where I didn't try to follow some type of specific thing, but rather just show a day in the life of something crazy that happens. And I mean, crazy things happen every day to people. I mean, I have a lot of days where I kind of wonder what that was. Yeah, I just tried to keep it raw and just keep it entertaining and then bring in my own emotions and my own perspective at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. It's not an academic exercise, and it's an expression of creativity. It's you letting something out. And I think like something that I've begun to realize just very recently, and this maybe is a little bit silly, but like avant-garde filmmaking or just like filmmaking in general, like if something loses your attention or makes you think of something else or go to another place, like the movie is causing that. It's your response to that that's being examined. So like when you watch something, obviously put your phone down, like take that out of it. But like wherever it takes you, whatever it makes you think about, feel about, when you're watching something, whether it's Mountain Ben or a fucking Avengers movie, like that's what filmmaking is. It's your response to that, and it can be very straightforward, or it can be something very abstract. And I think Mountain Ben has moments of that stuff that feels traditional narrative, but then stuff that also feels very, like you said, disjointed, unnatural, more like real life.
I wish I could have made it slower, especially in some of the scenes. I wish I could have drawn them out a little bit more. They seemed a little rushed in some of them. Like maybe we get a few more sentences or a little more conversation. But yeah, I think it's just turning to everything. Attention spans like this now. Everyone's looking at their phone and they're not looking at the clouds. And I mean, I could look at the clouds for 4 hours instead of my phone. But I guess it depends on the type of person you are, maybe too. I feel like an old man half the time, but if I'm gonna watch a film, I'm gonna sit down and I want to enjoy the whole thing and the whole story. If I'm gonna watch TV, maybe I don't care about that as much. Maybe I'm doing something else at the same time. So that's something else I play into a lot of the things I make is how can I keep their interest because I know that it's not given to me necessarily anymore. And maybe that's even what some of the directors have said too, to where the attention isn't in demand because there's so many distractions. I'll be watching movies with people. I mean, if I'm into for the majority of the time, if I want to watch a movie, I'll watch the whole thing. But I look over and people are distracted the whole time. They're not really even really watching it. I mean, well, I guess just the screen to either learn or to just feel that. enjoyment void, I suppose. It's one of the two. It's either for pleasure or for knowledge. But
Movies are the most accessible form of art. They are, often entertaining, sure, but like it's a lot easier to sit down even like the most and watch the most arty film and like enjoy it and access it than it is just like a painting on the wall. I think film is for everybody, and it's my favorite thing. I love movies of all kinds, good, bad, ugly, mountainous, cool. This is Kody and Korbin Have a Podcast, the show where two former roommates talk about Cool Hand Luke.
Lucas Jackson, maliciously destroying municipal property while under the influence.
I was just passing time, Captain.
Well, you got yourself some time now.
Any man don't keep order spends a night in the box. I hope you ain't gonna be a hard case.
Save your strength, cause you're gonna need it.
Stay down.
Take the grass here, boss! Get it!
Get the man, boy, get the man.
You crazy handful of nuts.
Some men you just can't reach. He's got rabbit in his blood, and he runs. What we've got here is failure to communicate.
I'm Korbin Zvokel, your host, and I'm joined by Cody Webb, my co-host. We're back with Ben Smith talking about Cool Hand Luke, like I said. Cody,
I'm very excited to be back. It's been a little bit since we recorded all together as well, but it's been a very long time since we recorded with Ben. So excited for a fun episode. I had a bunch of scrambled egg for breakfast this morning in honor of this movie. So I think it's gonna be a fun one, man.
taking us all the way back to 2022, the Paul Blart episode, our 69th episode of all time. We're
Got 69.
a long way from that, and glad to have you back, Ben. This is the oldest movie we have ever covered on KHAP. So
Wow.
really,
you came with Paul Blart, maybe not super high class art, but now you're actually making us, be a little bit more cultured.
well, it's only 1967.
It's really not that old.
We don't do
we
classics.
haven't covered
We
a
don't
lot
do
of classic
classics.
films, admittedly.
Classics.
It's not the oldest film I've ever seen in my life.
You tell me you don't turn on Charlie Chaplin sometimes just for the hell of it.
Hey, man, I watched The Kid just a couple weeks ago, but moving forward, I think we need to expand our knowledge base. But I blame Cody for that.
Yeah. I'm a I'm a post 2000 guy for sure, but I love this movie. I'll say that off the bat. So I do like that. We need to expand our horizons, and that's kind of what this podcast is about. So
You obviously didn't know that, Ben, but why did you pick this movie?
Out of everybody you could have chose, why did you pick me?
Well, it was between this or the Blues Brothers, and I wanted to do something that was actually acclaimed and dramatic. Maybe we could actually not only talk about the hysterical stuff like them destroying a mall in the Blues Brothers, but an actual story, and Cool Hand Luke really is that to me. It's a hero story, in my opinion. I don't remember how I found it, but I've watched it probably 8 times since I was 21. And watching it this past time was like, it was very close to watching it the first time. Or when I watched Rudy and finally understood what the meaning behind that film was, He just wanted to play. That was it. It's not that complicated.
Cool Hand Luke, similarly.
Yeah, he just wants to win. Well, I think towards the middle of it, then it just became a competition for him to where, all right, I'm gonna beat you now, But they poked the bear. That is Cool Hand Luke, and he, in theory, I think he won.
You said you've seen this 8 times. Do you remember the first time you watched it?
I do remember the first time I watched it. I was sitting in a lazy boy in one of the houses, the one I lived in on Stadium Street. Parts of it hit me differently than parts that hit me watching it the past time. I was more impressed with the Chain Gang when I first watched it. I was like, oh, this is maybe where Oh Brother, Where Art Thou comes from, I didn't really pay attention to the loafers he had on when he was cutting off the parking meters. I hate to be a hypocrite, but I might have been on my phone for the first 5 minutes the first time I watched it. I found my punishment for when I'm a parent, first time I watched this. I'm gonna make my kids dig holes.
I thought you were going to put them in the box.
No, not the box. No, you might end up on the news if you do the box. But it's more your dirt's in my hole. You should probably put it in my yard.
Luke, what you think you're doing? Just getting my dirt out of Boss Keene's ditch, boss. I'll be damned if you're gonna put your dirt in my yard. You hear me? Now let's get out of there.
They still have sass. You can just go back and forth off of that forever, you know.
Holes ripped that off, basically. So Holes is even bigger scam. Terrible movie.
Plus, if you make a kid hate digging holes, that's not a bad thing. I mean, you don't need to do that for a living. Nobody needs to dig holes for a living. But
Right.
I don't know if many people do anymore. It's kind of a thing of the past with excavators and bobcats.
I think in Holes, you know, it was more about building character and looking for buried treasure, unfortunately.
I think it was about looking.
Definitely buried treasure. I watched this film on Tubi.
I did too, yeah.
Shout out to Tubi. Kody, any notable things? Obviously interrupted by ads, which is never great. But a lot of classics on Tubi. I did, having not seen a lot of Paul Newman stuff, I watched like half of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid as well on Tubi. But
nice.
Are you a Tubi head, Kody?
It's okay. I do the thing where I refuse to make an account, so it doesn't save. Like if I
you better not close out of that tab.
Yeah, so I always weather the storm and go straight through. But it's okay. They do actually have a lot more movies on there than I would have thought. So I guess shout out Tubi. Didn't have to rent this, which was nice.
What about Ben? Do you have a copy or?
No, I bought it on Apple, on the Apple store the first time I watched it. That's where I watched it every time, I believe.
You gotta own it. I love it. Initial thoughts. Let's jump over to those.
You know, I'm too damn bad if you don't like my initial clinical reaction.
You mentioned Holes, which I wanted to hit right off the bat because I think there's two films that we've covered on the podcast that those films are most referencing this film, or at least this is the predecessor to those. And, you know, Holes was the maybe jokey answer. But then the obvious is Shawshank Redemption. Obviously a more heartfelt story, a more diverse story. I think if you don't have a story like this come out, you never get Shawshank. So it's cool to examine it, kind of like the origination. This is a time when like anti-heroes, characters like Cool Hand Luke were really coming to be for the first time.
I want to say that too, because it's weird order, obviously, for me seeing, you know, all of the prison media, you know, the prison movies. You got, you know, Prison Break, one of my all-time favorites. I've seen all of those before this movie, which probably feels backwards. But like the first 10, 15 minutes of this, I was thinking like, oh, it's just like another one of these prototypical, you know, prison movies. I thought we were going to get, you know, the hopeful journey that we got in Shawshank. And it does have aspects of that for sure in the first half too, with, you know, the crew starting to love him, you know, the egg scene, which I'll talk about more, I love. But then it takes a real turn, I think, with obviously just the character development. It's also just like relevant to me because he's trying to escape so much, and I really like that. So it's unlike any sort of prison, you know, media I've seen, which I was surprised by after seeing like all of the predecessors before this.
And something that I think is cool about this in comparison, like Shawshank is definitely about like the system failing, but it's also about like the horrors within the prison, and like those are the main antagonists. Where like in this film, really the central antagonist, obviously you have Dragline, but like the antagonists is the prison system. It's the captain. It's the guys who are forcing them to be on this chain gang. It is the establishment, quite literally. You know, this was a very pertinent time in American history in the late 60s, where people are becoming more and more anti-establishment, rallying against the Vietnam War. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that we'll kind of get into what it's trying to say.
I think he's a guy that's he went to war and he comes back and he leaves a private. Came in a private, left a private, but he has all these medals and awards. So I feel that he saw the laws of man in their heart and soul in war, was able to survive the laws of man. I think he feels that he has seen a lot and he made it out of that. And the laws of society just are kind of silly to him after fighting, I guess, his maker in a way. He is the world shaker and he meets his maker at the end of it. Because he could have kept walking, but he looked at that church that he had passed when the dog chili pepper scene happened. which I caught that watching it this past time. I think it became a competition for him when they tested him about his mother dying and put him in the box. I think at that point he was like, "All right, I'm over being here," because I think I'm here. Oh well, see what this experience brings. And then you see that true relationship that he holds with his mother. And I mean, I haven't seen many films that have that uniqueness to it when she comes in the caravan. I've never seen a caravan before.
Shot that scene in one day. Just turned the back, 8 pages of dialogue. They had 2 legends.
I kind of feel bad for John almost. Like she's saying how much she doesn't have the same love for him that she has for Luke. And you see John standing next to the car at the end of the scene. So he's definitely hearing the whole thing, maybe. But I think he's just trying to find his way, and it becomes a competition, and he really does beat them at the end of it. But they beat him too. I mean, I like that's how good of an actor Paul Newman is, that he looks like he's a 70-year-old man as he's coming back in after the whole scene. And then he admits to Dragline later that they did beat him for that small amount of time, but then he came back. I mean, the next morning, or whatever. His line right at the end of the film before the gun goes off.
What we got here is a failure to communicate.
That's his fuck you, And I don't know if he dies or not. I don't think he does. Maybe he does with the plane taking off in the closing scene on the highway. I would assume that was a plane taking off. And then you see everything zoom into his eye. But it's that Paul Newman smile that really wins you over. The first thing I noticed was the loafers. Or maybe the whole precedence of violation. That's kind of the theme of the whole movie, right? Violation. You did something that was wrong. And they filmed that in Lodi, California. And I think they left the parking meters for a long time without the heads on them. Like a whole block of just parking meters without heads on them. It's just a raw and real story, and I don't think they shy too far away from Don Pierce's book that he wrote only a few years before that.
Yeah, I had that.
65.
1965 novel, Cool Hand Luke. Kody, have the only Paul Newman movie I'll admit that I've seen is Cars. Like, is it the same for you? Is this your real introduction to live action, or are you a Paul Newman guy?
I'm pretty sure. I'll have to check, but I mean, yeah, Cars obviously was a childhood classic of mine, so I can relate to that. But I thought he was really great in this. I understand kind of the prevalence of him as, a classic movie star, because I thought he absolutely killed. And another thing I want to say too, going back to what you guys were saying with the box being the turning point. Honestly, I think just Paul Newman's character is the most interesting thing for me here. And the more I thought about his actions in the first half of it being maybe he was a little bit distracted from, his psychological issues and why he got there, just because all of these guys were in love with him. And I think that was really fun for him to kind of go on that journey. But then, like you said, the turning point with his mom dying, I think he just goes back to realizing, this is real life and just being the really sad character that he is, even though he is smiling the entire movie. I think this is just a very subtle depiction of a guy who's just worn down and really sad. And obviously, I mean, he gets that ending, which I think he enjoys, but I don't know. Like Ben said, it's hard for me to decipher what, his fate is, but I kind of lean more into that. He does die. Spoiler alert. So I don't know. I need a rewatch for sure instantly on this one, but I just loved his portrayal of this character.
I was reading Roger Ebert's review on this, and it was talking about that thing that you mentioned of how everyone loves him, kind of not right away, but pretty quickly. He gains the love of all and the admiration of everyone around him, but he doesn't like them back really at all.
Yeah, he ditches his boy at the end too.
Despises them the whole time. There's a great quote.
Well, they're idiots to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also I don't know, he's flawed. It's a whole thing. It's very complex. There's a quote from the Ebert review. used to be the anti-hero was a bad guy we secretly liked. Then with Brando, we got a bad guy we didn't like. And now in Cool Hand Luke, we get a good guy who becomes a bad guy because he doesn't like us. So it's like this thing where it's like early on, like when he's smiling, you're like, oh yeah, this is great. But there is that turning point near the end. And then also there's a turning point for them. The prisoners have a turning point with him where they kind of, when they see him get down on his knees and beg to the officers with the whole put your dirt in the ditch scene that we've talked about, they kind of are like, oh shit, well, he finally gave up. So I think there's a complexity to that, which is really cool to see examined in this movie.
Well, it's kind of like being in the media, isn't it? They like him when he's up, but then they go back off on him when he's down. I mean, they all gave up on him. They're they're very quick to change their minds and very quick to play into it. But I found it funny when they're all saying, when the captain's saying what they're in for, and it's all your normal crimes, and they all have their excuses, and they quickly put those to stop. And it gets to Luke, and he's Cool Hand Luke, and he's just cutting heads off parking meters, So I was just bored. that's what he gives. He sets himself apart from the crowd right there.
He's not really doing it. It's anti-establishment, but he's not doing it with like, I'm doing this as an act of protest or rebellion. He is just kind of aimless, where he doesn't have a purpose in the world. And like you see that scene with his mom, but it's like there's obviously a lot of, his father left, a lot of shit to unpack there. He talks about relationships he's had with women that clearly have not worked out for him, and he's just this drunk guy, breaking parking meters.
He's lost. And he's just floating through life. Or maybe he's not lost. Maybe he feels he's above everything. But
I mean, he's also the ultimate, gambler. He's Cool Hand Luke. He's also, you don't know what he's holding at any point in the movie, quite literally.
I think that smile it's always going to be there, but you don't know if it's actually true. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, there is something behind him at all times, and I don't actually know like what he's feeling throughout the movie, which is hard to decipher.
Let's jump over to roll credits.
Say that again.
It's fantastic.
Yes, it is. Guys, I got it.
This movie obviously opens with, big credits, as many classic films do, listing out the full cast, listing out cinematographers. You get a big movie star shot of Paul Newman walking into the frame with Paul Newman in big text, ahead of the title, Cool Hand Luke. And then Joe Van Fleet as Orletta is the other credit that is given, which is the mother character. And I really wasn't familiar with her. I think she was in like East of Eden and some other films, but I hadn't seen her too much. And then, of course, Paul Newman. Some other characters and actors, Harry Dean Stanton, Dennis Hopper appears. And then Dragline, he does go on to win the Academy Award for this film. And he also plays Brick Bazooka in the film Small Soldiers, Cody.
That's right. I saw that.
He promoted himself. He promoted probably $5,000, and I think that's what ultimately won him the Academy Award for it. Is what
Shout
I
out
was
to George Kennedy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm kind of surprised he won for that, but a little bit of money on the side makes sense. But good cast. I didn't even realize until the end that Dennis Hopper was in this, which I thought was fun. Very, very young Dennis Hopper. And then
very odd young man in this film.
Yeah, his character is just very different from the other stuff he do in his career as well, I feel like. And Harry Dean Stanton, who I like too, obviously, Alien, it's the big thing I know him from. He's got a tiny role in The Avengers.
Yeah, I mean, he's in a ton of David Lynch movies. Dennis Hopper as well in Blue Velvet.
Going back to George Kennedy real quick, Dirty Dozen came out this same year. I think there's a month difference between the two films. But between him playing Dragline in this movie and then the major that he plays in the Dirty Dozen, he's kind of a side character. He's a very soft-spoken, honest, nice, humble man in the Dirty Dozen. And I'd watched that after I watched this film initially. And I kind of chuckled a little bit because it's a completely different, there's polar opposites. Watching these guys, I haven't seen much of their films, but to be able to see those two versions is interesting to look at. He's also in Creepshow 2.
Oh. Well, hey, that's the watch list. Actors are amazing. You know, everyone is so surprised by the evil Nazi in Zone of Interest now being a character on the White Lotus. This movie opens with that violation that Ben mentioned earlier, that symbol, and then that kind of becomes a repeated motif throughout the film. The roads, the traffic signs, the stop signs, stop lights. I think that's really cool imagery, and like it's obviously very representative of kind of like the expansion of America, the way that like the labor of these prisoners is being exploited at a time to like build up the country free of cost. And I think like this constant use of road signs, even the fact that he destroys a parking meter, like all of this is very interconnected. The tarring scene, which obviously, you know, we love a good road tarring scene in a Paul Newman movie. And yeah, and they tarred a real road.
No, I agree. I want to mention too, just like with the opening scene, you know, it's definitely got the iconicness to it. I feel like of maybe that is the most memorable scene to me of him just chopping off the meters. So I like that a lot. And then that's the introduction to one of my other favorite things of his necklace being this bottle opener. Just, I think that goes with his character so well. And to have that introduced, you know, in the first, you know, opening shot scene, I think is really fun.
We got to talk about the title, Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I think it's a good title because first off, it doesn't give away really what the movie's going to be about, which I do like that a lot. Because when I was just thinking about like this movie, I thought it was going to be like similar to other Paul Newman stuff, like The Sting, or you know, he's some card dealer or some crap. So I didn't expect a prison movie with it, but I do think it is really effective because obviously it's his nickname, but it says so much about him as well, kind of that character, you know, depth and growth. So I'm a big fan of the title.
Lalo Schifrin, the music guy in this, does pretty well. Brings a lot of bluegrass gospel. When he sang "Plastic Jesus" too, that took him a few times. He had to learn that, and I think him and the director got in a fight, probably for a few days. And I wonder what him saying he could have done it better would have looked like. Like maybe that was okay. We've done this enough times. That's it, or that could be the best one. I mean, that is the only one that we ever get to see.
Right. He kept, you know, he wanted to perform the banjo, the music live himself. And then they kept pushing it back. Like he would do it and he was like, no, let's push it back. And finally it was the last day of filming. And the director was like, no one's going to be able to do it better than that. And I think the performance does pay off really well.
Get yourself a sweet Madonna dressed in rhinestone satin on pedestal of abalone shell. Going 90, I ain't scary, 'cause I got the Virgin Mary assuring me that I won't go to hell. Get yourself a sweet Madonna dressed in rhinestone satin on pedestal of abalone shell. Going 90, I ain't scary, 'cause I got the Virgin Mary assuring me that I won't go to hell.
The music is great. That's obviously like a pre-written song from about a decade earlier, but like he's nominated for best original score. And the music is all over really great in this movie.
I was going to say, I tried to find more on Carrie O'Dell, the art director, but they really didn't do that much more. Maybe 20 credits in total.
They do a really great job of building this southern prison out in Texas. Like it's supposed to be set in Florida, but it's in Texas. I know they brought in a lot of that brush that he hides in all from outside. Like that's all production design. Shake the bush, right, Cody?
Shake the bush. Keep shaking the bush. Best line in the movie.
I wonder how long he shook it, because I feel like
that's a lot of takes.
Longer than what they gave him for.
It's a lot of film shaking. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with the good stuff, Cody. I'll throw it over to you, man.
I mean, first thing was Paul Newman. I've been really praising him too much. We'll skip over that. I do like the direction a lot here too. There's a couple subtle things. I like a couple times how like there are big things happening off screen that we aren't shown. Specifically, especially the first time that he gets captured and just rolled back in. I think that's a massive gut punch when you see that. And then obviously the other times when that happens as well, it is off screen. You don't see kind of his continuing with the second one of, he was in the car, or maybe that was the first one. He was in the car and, the cop pulled up next to him. I kind of like how he used that just as stories later on. Because then you have the thing too with the picture where you don't know if all that stuff is actually real. That's kind of just what he is telling them. So I think just like the nuance of the direction of not including everything, just so you keep asking questions and want to watch the movie again, which I like a lot. And then also another little thing with that too is there's no information shown on any planning for the escapes, which there's a throwaway line which he says he never planned anything in his life. I call bullshit on that. I'm sorry. But I like how it's not shown though, because that first escape is very surprising to me on a first watch. And also too, I didn't even 100% know for sure it was Paul Newman was the guy that got away until like halfway through the escape, just because of kind of the camera work and the lighting there. So overall, I haven't seen anything else from this director. I think he did Amity Horrorville, which I should check out. But I like the direction a lot overall too. I was very surprised.
Shout out to Stuart Rosenberg.
Stu. Big up, Stu.
In comparison to Shawshank Redemption, where that's a movie that's very fairy telling and its ending, he escapes, he gets out, he runs away. Where this is like, he runs away, he gets captured. He runs away, he gets captured. He runs away. Like it's very, again, this movie is about resiliency and constantly trying to get up. Obviously, he maybe gets broken at a certain point at the end, right? And then he gets even more broken by a gunshot to the neck. But it's this repeated kind of, get up, keep going. And the movie doesn't really pull any punches. You are forced to kind of see him keep running away, even though it does, make it a con man story where he gets to frame the narrative, like you said, Cody. Ben, what do you got for good, man?
I think Lucille is one of the most beautiful actresses I've ever seen on screen.
Lucille.
I think he takes that from, there's a song going around during that time that a lot of, like B.B. King sang it. Maybe his guitar was named Lucille though. But it was about, when he did name it Lucille, it was about a girl named Lucille who knocked a lantern over or something in a bar, and the bar caught on fire and he ran back in to get his guitar. So I guess that's a backstory for the name. But back to the movie. The way that these close-up shots showed the individual personalities of some of these just side prisoners, and you really got a feel for what it was like in that system and all these different people that are there, like you can go from A to B, or I mean A to Z, with the way that these guys acted. And the truck caravan is something I've never seen before. I really love that. I think the most humorous thing in the whole film, or at least one of them, is the dogs with the chili powder. And I think both of those kids feel like they're from something during that time period, that they kind of like ad-libbed them in there. They have this look about them to where they were like already famous, in my opinion. But it's also one of the most honest and raw mother and son relationship conversations that I've seen, in a very unique, strange way at the same time. It was more like talking with a good friend rather than being a mother. Is kind of how it felt, especially keeping the names out of the way, which maybe that even goes more to stay out of the institution, to where he doesn't call her his mother, but rather they're on a name-to-name basis. When I first watched it, I loved the asphalting. I thought that was it was like a motivational scene for me. And then as I watched this past time and all the other times I've seen, I start developing into more of the deeper meanings, and I guess more of appreciation of what there is to offer in this.
I think this movie is like very clearly representative of that anti-establishment mentality, like we said. from the tearing down of the parking meters, which is literally, he's put in prison for 2 years for destroying municipal property. Like, it's because it's stuff that belongs to the state, belongs to the government, that he's sent to this work camp where he's then going to repair for this long time. And he's a veteran, like we've said. He served in the Army. There's a great shot of when he's first in camp, the scene Ben was talking about, where they're all kind of giving their excuses, and they list him as, you served in World War II, and you see this flag next to him, on the left side of the screen, and then he's on the right side of the screen. But yet still here he is, abandoned by his government, abandoned by society around him, put into jail because there was no one, kind of there to help him. And then this, resiliency that he shows, this remaining silent kind of throughout the time, trying to constantly be against the guards, but not doing it in a extremely brash or rebellious way, just kind of pissing them off by not giving them anything, which she kind of talks about, Ben. Shout out to the tarring of the roads. That is just an incredible scene. It really just sticks with you. And just like every scene in this of them working is so sweaty and grimy, and you feel it. Like, it feels like they really were on a chain gang. And you talk about the Lucille scene. Well, maybe we'll mention it in the ugly here with kind of the behind the scenes stuff. But like, you do see each and every one of these guys who, like, in the filming of this, were separated from their wives and had to, go out and be in the hot summer day and kind of recreate this. It's raw and real stuff.
Taking it off, boss.
Yeah, that thing too, man. They have to ask for permission.
Taking it off, putting it back on.
Yeah, I love that. I was gonna say I do like all the work scenes with them together. Kind of rolling in the asphalt scene, kind of with that egg scene too, which I wanted to talk about. I think, especially on the first watch, where I'm not even wrapped up into, the Paul Newman character and the nuance yet in the first half. I just really enjoy kind of the bonding of that, of them sprinting down and doing the asphalt. And then I think the egg scene is just, it's really fun, I think. It's so lighthearted. You get the essence of this character too, of he will literally do anything he puts his mind to. Like, no one is going to stop this guy. But I do think probably 50 eggs would almost murder a guy. So I don't know about the realism of it.
How many eggs could you eat, both of you?
He actually ate 8.
He only ate 8. How many could you do, Ben?
How many would I be? I don't know.
I don't know.
I could eat them scrambled.
Yeah, I'm a scrambling guy too.
Hard-boiled is tough.
10? I don't know. In an hour? Maybe 20.
If I'm peeling for you.
Yeah, I like that too. The semantics of, does he have to peel his own eggs? Really good betting stuff there too. So I like that. But also just like the funny shots of his boy like shoving the eggs in his mouth. I thought there's like a lot of humor in that scene that played really well too.
You change it to fried bluegill, and I'll try to get 40 of them down.
I believe it.
We'll hold you to that. That'll be next time you're on the pod.
Oh, I would love that. We got to find someone that can fish bluegill first. So I can fry them, but I can't fish them. Haven't learned that skill yet.
We'll do a Free Willy bluegill cook-off. I don't know. So
Free
yes, or something.
Dolphin tail.
We'll pick a movie. We'll figure it out.
We can do a river runs through it. That matches it closely.
There you go.
That's another
Bring us some
one
culture.
like this, a good somber one. Legends of the Fall would have been another good one on my list that
Falls,
I kind of forgot about. That's another one.
It's a lot of, listen, the Blues. You mentioned the Blues Brothers. I would love for you to come back and do the Blues Brothers sometime as well.
That'd be a fun one. Yeah,
especially with SNL 50. I've been wanting to watch that movie again.
They introduced me to the world of blues music, and I'm in a deep dive at this point. Like, I'm tracing it all the way. I'm listening to Son House and Sonny Boy Williamson too. I would recommend that to the both of you. You should look him up, especially YouTube videos of him.
Darling, do me a favor, keep it to yourself. Please, darling, do me a favor, keep our business to yourself. You know I don't want you to tell nobody. Don't mention it to no one else. Don't tell your mother. Don't tell your father. Don't tell your sister. And don't mention it to your brother, please, darling.
He's a very interesting man. I found it was Lonnie Johnson singing Lonesome Night, and Sonny Boy introduces him. And then that's when I went into it, and I was like, holy shit, who is this guy?
A clip just played for the people listening.
Probably the best harp player I've ever found. He could play the harp. He just put it in his mouth. And he'd play it better than a lot of people could play with two hands. There apparently was a Sonny Boy Williamson 1 out there at the same time, too.
That did pop up in my Google search. They were both there, so it makes sense.
I haven't listened to number 1 that much, but Sonny Boy.
You can co-sign number 2. Well, it is funny though. Going back to the Blues Brothers, you were like, oh, that movie doesn't maybe have a lot of big ideas. But like there's a lot of religious stuff in that, I remember specifically. And this movie also heavily is a ton of religious imagery. Cool Hand Luke is almost a Christ-like figure. He's a martyr. He's a saint. The name Luke, obviously biblical. The image that is my background, if I can crouch around, like that's Christ on the cross, right?
The egg shot, yeah.
You know, we got, he's suffered the eggs. He's put into the box for 3 days. He's got 12 inmates that he's surrounded by, very cautious, very purposely put into the credits, listed 12 names, the 12 inmates. Dragline betrays him at the end of the movie, kind of at the church, the scene where he comes in, we'll separate you, but then he comes back and they're not out there, but they are out there. And there's a lot of pleading with God and talking to God. And I always think it's interesting, maybe not as a religious person even, but it's cool to see the way religion, whether it's Christian or any other religion, mythology, belief systems, exhibited into like a narrative story and become allegories for that. So I've always find that interesting. And as I kind of dove deep and examined that, it was cool. Did you guys pick up on any of the religious stuff?
Yeah. I was going to say, the thing I liked most with that was the scene where it started like pouring a bunch and everyone runs into the trucks and he just stands outside, shouting at God, show me something, take it away. I don't care. I really like that a lot. And then kind of like you're saying too, when he does escape the first couple times, he kind of makes eye contact with different, churches and religious stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he comes out of a church. He gets shot in a church.
And then the third time, he's drawn to the church almost, and then it is like his downfall at the end. So, yeah, it is very interesting, especially with all of the disciples. I didn't realize that. I think that's a really good point. But they really do view him as like a saint. I think near the halfway point in the movie. So there's little hints, but the more you broke it down, I think you are right of it. It probably is saying a lot more about that than I realized.
I don't know if it's his downfall. I think he has a decision with 2 different choices after he leaves Dragline. He sees the station where he was at earlier with the chili powder, and then he sees the church behind it. And I think he goes to make terms with his maker. And I think he's trying to get through this whole thing of talking to God and trying to trust in him and see him, and even just try to get put into a bigger perspective with it. And then Dragline comes in, and he's I got to get back to this fucking other shit. Like Dragline's this just big dumb guy, and he's bullied his way through to the top in the prison system, and he's like begging for mercy and how everything's gonna be fine. And I think Luke's just thinking about things that are so beyond that, where he's just kind of at that point he's like, you know what, have me. I give up, have me, but I'm gonna let you have me the way that I want you to,
He's calling out to God, what do I do now? And I think that can be mirrored in the Jesus story of like, him having to accept his fate of being sacrificed and having to go on the cross. But in this case, like he's just a man he's tried to run away. He's been put down by like he doesn't know what to do. And then he accepts his fate of, if you're right, he just has to go out and unfortunately.
Well, I think that is God. Yes, God. Yeah, like what you just said. He asked God, and Dragline walks and he goes, "Oh, okay."
This
he looks back at it. Oh, this is it, huh? You give me this guy again, but I think that really consolidates itself when he goes, "What we have to fear is a failure to communicate," and then they shoot him. It's kind
Yeah.
of like his punch back at him and
I think he does win in the
throw
end
their
too.
mark.
Like the last shot of him in the car, like he's smiling even though he's dying. So
And
I
the
think
fact that he
he
lives
ended
on
up
in the
where he
memory
wanted
of these
to.
other prisoners. Like that's what
Yeah.
the final shots really are them thinking about him, reminiscing on what he meant to them.
He lives on in the lore. The lore,
Yeah.
as Dragline says, the story. He's a myth now. The legend of Cool Hand Luke. I wrote a short story after I watched this film too.
Oh yeah.
It was called Chevy and Pistol, and it had a lot of is like this movie combined with Huckleberry Finn, maybe combined with Peanut Butter Falcon. If you guys have seen that with Shia LaBeouf, I kind of put all that together, and maybe even of Mice and Men too, because
Right. Yeah.
Little Lenny in there.
Too cool, too Luke.
Yeah, there's a little Lenny in that.
One small thing I did have as well. I really like in his first escape attempt when he gets to the river, he decides to swim upstream. I just thought that was completely fucking badass. And I'll talk a little bit more about the dogs and the bad, but I just thought all the mind games of the escape was something that really kind of interested me as well. Yeah.
Made you think he's done it before, the way that he did it.
Yeah.
Like this isn't his first rodeo. They never say what he was in the army, do they? They don't say if he was in the army or if he was a Marine or anything, do they?
He's definitely. I mean, he's got the chili powder stuff. He's got some ideas.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. I mean, the only information they give away really is like all the awards that he won. Like I think he's like a double Purple Heart and then a few other things. So it's not specific. He could have been, yeah, pretty much anything, but he's got the skills to pay the bills, I would say for sure.
Let's jump over to the bad. And the first thing I'll say, Harry Dean Stanton, I think just underutilized in this movie. I think we could have used a lot more of him. Obviously, the supplementary characters are all, they're there, but you don't get enough of them. But Harry Dean Stanton, he's one of the greats.
I agree. I think the side characters, like Ben said, I mean, I like the way that they were shot and kind of the physical acting, I think was really good across the board, but a little bit more dialogue about kind of who these guys are and where they come from. I like the newcomers. I think Harry Dean Stanton is one of them.
Yeah.
So I like that how they incorporated them into the story. But yeah, I agree. Harry Dean Stanton's awesome. So for me, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. It's just like the guards are idiots and the dogs are ass. Like they're just not very good at their jobs. And also like the warden, the big bad guy. I just don't like the high-pitched voice. I think that's my least favorite thing about him. It doesn't remind me too much of John Voight in Holes, so that is another exact rip-off from Holes, making it even worse. But, I mean, the big thing for me is, like, after the first escape attempt, you would think they would, like, up the security. I mean, he's back there for one day, shaking the bush, and nobody believes that he's going to run off. So I think that's just, mismanagement there. And then even after, the second time he escapes and they bring him back, and of course they break him, quotations, like they give him access to guns and like keys and stuff. Like they're daring him almost to escape. So I just don't like all of that, the mind games with that. And then the dogs, like I said, are just terrible at their jobs. I really like him jumping over the barbed wire fences, just like that shot. But then like the one dog like rolling around in the barbed wire, like what are we doing, bro? Like how stupid are you? But I think he died too. So tough. R.I.P.
Animal
But
abuse, yeah, it's not very good.
they're just not good at their jobs. The pepper is a good move. I did like that a lot. But yeah, these dogs need Scooby Doo or something because they're just shit at their jobs.
I think the one complaint that I really have is in like magazine stuff. Like I just don't think you need that. It's a little confusing, like even where that comes from. And obviously it's him kind of bolstering this fake image that he's as a con man, as the guy who's got the empty hand of cards that's always bluffing. But I just think that like doesn't even really make any logical sense that he would have the time to get the magazine made and sent to them. Like, and how long is he gone for? And then he still gets caught. Like if you're that far gone, it's just weird.
Those are my only 2 points, really, is what you mentioned, then the guards and the dogs. I don't get how he faked that picture in a situation, how he did it so quickly. He's got to be like a craftsman, like forger, like Neo from White Collar. Like he has to be at the elite of the elite
Well,
levels.
he's fucking Frank Abagnale Jr., dude, and catch him if you can.
There you go. I mean, that's an elite level. So I don't know how the hell he did that. I do think it's unnecessary for the story too, just because, like, if that was the ending and he got away, I think that's fun. But for him to come back after that, like that's not him in the picture, right? Definitely not.
Well, I mean, it is.
It's photoshopped. It has to be
Yeah,
photoshopped.
but they don't have
But how the hell
Photoshop
did
in
he do that?
1957.
Exactly. How the hell did he do it so well? So more questions than answers there. But again, it doesn't really contribute that much. I just think he could have cut that. And
There is some foreshadowing there where like the advertisement right next to it is a gun pointed at his head and it's like the illusion is fake or something. I can't remember what it said. So,
I like that.
there's something, but
Fun imagery nonetheless. But yeah, story wise, I think just useless.
Ben, what do you got for Badman?
Any negatives? I mean, this is a damn good movie and one of your favorites, but nitpick something for me.
I don't know if they're bad, but I call them goofs, I guess. The first one is you go from Lucille's breast pressed against the car window to just Babaluga just singing his heart out in the shower with a bunch of other men, and
Yeah, that quick
that really
cut.
does something right there for you, huh?
Very intentional, singing the nursery rhymes.
Yeah, this is like it's like oh, back to reality, or it shows the pinpoint of what they can't have,
And then they get into a
what-
fight.
where
I mean,
they
it
are.
makes it's a lot of pent up male
Pent up rage, yeah.
sexual
A
aggression.
lot of
I mean,
homoeroticism for sure.
They kept it clean. They could have done some fucked up shit with that, too, but they didn't. They kept it clean. The second one would be when Luke's going out to see his mother. There's two guys jumping rope together. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
that was very goofy to me. But I don't really have any bad. I guess I have maybe one ugly, but yeah, that more goofy than bad.
Last thing I'll say, and I really love the first time it happens, the reflection shot in the glasses of the guy. There's a really sick one where it zooms in straight on his face, and you're like, how did they do that? And then it's repeated as a motif throughout the film, where it's like you keep seeing the reflection of his glasses, and he's this kind of omniscient president. But it's just too much, too much reflection shots. We get it. We can see everybody.
Going off a bit for your liking.
Got to nitpick something, man.
It's very nitpicky stuff. This is a good movie. Yeah.
Well, let's jump over to the ugly. It for me does deal with the car wash scene, and not even that. Like, I think it's a very interesting scene in the movie. And the movie is surprisingly unhorny in a way. Like Ben, you said it could have gone off the rails, but it was in the filming of it. It wasn't that she wasn't uncomfortable. She wasn't uncomfortable filming the scene. They just wanted her to smoke marijuana before she filmed the scene, and she was like, I've never smoked weed before, and I don't really want to do it. Like, why do you want me to do that? And they're just like, well, I feel like that's what your character would be high in this instance. And she was like, this is really strange. So then they didn't make her do that, but just really weird behind the scenes thing that, of course, IMDb trivia, who knows how 100% accurate that was, but I found that very strange. And then also maybe she like didn't realize that it was super sexual until she saw it in the movie. And then she was like, oh yeah, but like, it's a very charged scene for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how she wouldn't think it's super sexual, but fair enough. But yeah, there's probably no intimacy coordinators back then, right?
That's true.
So,
but hey, a Best Picture winner might not either. So
even these days, they don't have them. So they definitely didn't have them back then.
Shout out to Honora.
There were a lot of teenage boys in 1967 that were all googly eyed when they saw that.
Like, have you guys seen Cool Hand
That was
Luke,
a
man?
grown
You gotta
man
watch
too,
2 hours of
like-
dudes shirtless sweating in a prison, but there's one car
I mean,
wash
imagine
scene.
being 13 and that's your first exposure to something like that. You can go if your parents are trying to.
It doesn't go too like it definitely has a line.
Yeah, what's the rating on this? It's got to be PG for the 60s. Has to be. So this was probably seen by a lot of young children.
PG, man.
Yeah.
No
They didn't give a
PG-13
crap
back
about
then.
Heck no.
I get shot. It's intense.
Yeah, there's not that much blood. Yeah, there's nothing too brutally violent. It's just more sad violent.
And it's not violent. The thing is, like, these aren't violent offenders either. Like, these are rather, the one guy's in there for manslaughter, sure, but they're not stuck in cells. They're all sleeping in a barrack that's open. Like, none of them are going to kill each other in their sleep. There's obviously a big boxing match, but nothing is very intense about any of these guys, really. They are rather just kind of like blue collar guys that fucked up and probably, have substance abuse issues or, whatever it may be.
My ugly, I had a couple. Oh, actually, I only had one big one, and it mostly did revolve around the silent boss guy with the glasses. I mean, obviously he's a real dick going straight to the ending, but He also just shot a turtle for no reason. I thought that was kind of tough. I thought we were trying to save the turtles.
It, like, cooked it up, man. They had some dinner.
True. But yeah, I mean, I guess just going all the way to the ending. I mean, this guy is a really good shot, but I don't know. I feel like when he says that, the jokey line to him, it's more of an act of emotion. And even like all of the other guards around him are kind of looking at him like, what the fuck was that? So I just think like his character, I didn't think he was that bad of a guy the entire movie. But the last scene for sure kind of just was like, fuck you to that guy. So I guess that was well done, but I don't fuck with that guy. He's tough.
My uglies, the whole scene would be my ugly. That was hard to sit through, man. Just watching them have the upper hand, and really finally being able to digest themselves with this guy. They think that they had won. Seeing his performance, Paul Newman's in that scene, it really kind of hits home for a second. It gets you down to where he maybe was at, and then you get lifted back up when he overcomes it. To put that guy in the fear of God in him, just to push the fear of God onto somebody, it really felt like the institution was winning at that point. But that was probably my biggest ugly.
Yeah.
And it was just ugly to me, is how I kind of took that
Absolutely.
part of this that way.
All right, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the episode. You can follow the rest of our happenings over here at Kody and Korbin Have a Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at KHAP Podcasts, KHAP Please follow us on Spotify, give us a rating, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow along for more.
And we're back with Welcome to the Academy.
I'm going for the Oscar this year.
Ben, what award do you want to give Cool Hand Luke?
I've been trying to think of what I would call it, I guess the title, but is Paul Newman's performance singing Plastic Jesus. I mean, that I've only found one other person that sings it similar to that version. It's Thomas Cicero. I don't know if that's his last name or not, but he's like 28 right now. He kind of sings folk stuff, but he's the only one I can think of that comes close to it. I was trying to listen to it like on my phone, and I had to record it like from the movie to be able to listen to it and play it from voice memos, because the only version that showed up on Apple Music was Lalo Schifrin's without Paul singing it.
Oh yeah.
So that was one of those songs that really stuck with me for a while.
Best musical performance in a movie. That's what this gets.
It's a good title.
I back it.
Cody, what about you? What are you giving it?
My first one, I'm gonna give it the most depressing boxing match in movie history. I mean, it starts off and I'm kind of enjoying the scene, and then it just gets really, really dark. Obviously he's just getting his ass beat and then getting back up. It's a cool character thing, but for entertainment value, I'd say it's pretty much the low of the low boxing goes. There's another one that comes to mind too, like grudge match with De Niro and Stallone, excuse me. I mean, that's pretty fucking depressing as well, but this one just got to me. It made me sad.
You think he's gonna die at one point? Like it's
he's choosing to die over just staying down. Like that's his decision.
It's impressive though. He
It's
wins.
tough.
He wins him over in the
He
end.
does. He wins on every angle, but I feel like he loses.
I want to give this the award for the sweatiest movie, and obviously not. Movie can be sweaty in the ways that it's trying to get all the plot details across to you, but no, like these men are actually sweating. They're just very wet. Mountain Ben, also a very sweaty movie. I want to shout out. But this is up there.
There's a lot of water getting splashed on me. A lot of water getting splashed on me.
I think in this case it was probably real out there in the heat filming it, but sweaty movie. And then also the movie with the most eggs. I can't think of another one.
Really? Okay. Probably. What about that Chicken Run sequel? I think there's a lot of eggs in
Chicken
that
Little.
one, wasn't there?
Yeah. No
Fuck
eggs
no,
in it.
not that movie. Or Hop. There's a lot of eggs in that movie. We could have a debate, but yeah, for live action, I mean, this is pretty insane.
Rocky also a movie with a lot of eggs.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I had one other one. I don't think this is really true, but I'm gonna give it horniest prison movie of all time.
Definitely not true, but like
yeah,
it is
definitely
in the conversation.
There's more horny ones. I luckily just haven't seen them because they're probably just the worst thing I would never want to watch in my life. But yeah, these boys are just horny as hell, and a lot of homoeroticism to go around. Especially, I feel like after the car scene, they kind of take all of that horniness and just push it towards Paul Newman and just become obsessed with him. So I think that plays a part into it as well.
They are in love, and they don't have their
Can't blame him, man.
They can't get the love anywhere else. So
he's cool.
It's gotta be directed somewhere. Great Letterboxd review. I don't know who it was from, but it was like eat an egg every time something gay happens.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
A lot of that. All right, invite, fight, night.
You gotta be my podcast.
You want to fight, dickless?
Wow, thanks. My knight in shining armor.
Kody, who do you want to invite on the podcast from this movie?
I'm inviting our boy Harry Dean Stanton. We've talked about him a couple times already. He's in Alien, like I said. He's in the Avengers. He's a damn good singer. I mean, he's got
a great voice.
Yeah, he's gonna fit the podcast form perfectly. I think that's an easy choice.
And obviously, Harry Dean Stanton, like I said, in a bunch of Lynch stuff, in Inland Empire,
he's just a good actor. Yeah,
yeah, but also like in a lot of weird films. So like that makes sense. Like he's kind of like he's a guy who like you can show him whatever, and he's gonna give you the same face. And he's got such an interesting face, but you're just gonna be like, okay, yeah, sure.
He reminds me of like a David Dastmalchian.
He's got the Appalachian face.
Ben, who do you want to invite?
Strother Martin, the captain. He was a swimming instructor who taught Charlie Chaplin's kids how to swim in Los Angeles before he became an actor. And he's born in Kokomo, Indiana, and grew up in Indianapolis. And he was also in the original True Grit. And he played Chong's dad in Cheech and Chong.
Oh, wow.
That's all I know about him. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good filmography for an Indiana guy.
He looks like the farmer I worked for. Doesn't sound like him, but like I kind of had that, I guess. I would love to get him on as the captain, I think, not just himself. But I got to plug my laptop in. That's who I would invite.
The captain is also who I had listed as well, and purely because he says there's a failure to communicate. Let's get him on and make sure we can fucking communicate. Let's break down these barriers. Let's talk it out. And again, it's over Zoom, so he can't shoot us. He can't arrest us. Fight, Kody. Who do you want to fight?
I'm going to fight Paul Newman. I mean, he dished his boy at the end, so I can't respect him for that. But I mean, I guess he got his ass beat already. I don't know. Maybe I want to fight the dogs. It's a toss-up. There's a lot of people I think deserve it in this movie. But personally, I kind of just want to deck him in the face for some reason, even though I feel sorry for him.
I'm going to fight Dragline. I think it's probably the easy take.
Yeah, but you're going to lose.
I would lose because he's a great boxer, but I'm going to take one for Paul and help him out. The only reason I want to fight Paul Newman partially is because he kind of looks the best he looks in the movie is when he's got the like bloody nose and his blue eyes are shining. And like, there is just something very cinematic and like star worthy about that. So I would punch him in the face to recreate that imagery, Kody. I agree with you there.
You're going to punch him because he's too good looking?
Well, now I want to make him more good looking. It's like the handsome Squidward thing. You keep hitting him and he just gets more and more handsome.
Makes sense.
Who do you want to fight, Ben?
Nobody. Kind of a pacifist.
Beautiful.
Respect.
First person to ever take that stand on the pod and sticking to your guns.
I was wondering.
Who do you want to knight then?
I want to knight Coco, but I don't know enough about Coco. So I'll probably go with Luke.
You could associate yourself with the wrong person if you say Coco. I do like Coconut as a name. That's a sick, coconut head.
I feel like he deserves an award, but Luke deserves to be knighted with the way that he's portrayed in this film. He's the hero. He's the King Arthur.
Yeah.
He's my knight as well, just because he doesn't make it.
Is Coco Dennis Hopper or is that a different?
No,
character?
he's Booga Luga.
That's what it was. The weird names threw me off. Okay, my knight. I'm gonna knight the two kids who gave him the spices and helped him escape. I think that was a really fun scene, and honestly, it took me a while to rack my brain and come up with a truly likable character in this flick. So I got to shout them out. I mean, they got him an axe. They got him some spices. What else can you ask, man? Good kids.
The recast.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
Because I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
Hey, I'm Batman. No, dude. No, I'm Batman.
Who is the modern day Paul Newman? Is there anybody that really is equivalent to him in modern filmmaking? I don't think so.
I think so.
Leonardo DiCaprio? What do you think, Ben?
No. Brandon Sklenar, The Lion Hunter from 1923, if you've seen it. The one with Harrison Ford,
the Yellowstone
sequel to Yellowstone. Yes.
Yeah. All right, I'm looking them up.
And if I had to give you another one, it'd be that popular fella right now that was just in the movie with the other popular lady. What's her? He was in Devotion, the airplane movie.
Okay, Austin Butler.
I'm talking
Jonathan
about
Majors. Jonathan Majors.
No.
Glenn Powell's
the
what he's
guy
talking
that
about.
was John. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. He'd be a close second, but I'm picking Brandon Sklenar. I don't know how you say his last name, but the Lion Hunter from 1923. I think that's who I instantly think of.
He plays, funny enough, the other guy, Cody, and It Ends With Us. There's obviously Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, and then he's like the other dude that she's, maybe does or doesn't end up with, not to spoil the movie. Brandon Sklenar does. I agree. Glenn Powell, Austin Butler, I think are like the two guys who are, maybe
I don't think they could do it.
They're just blonde and handsome, but they're not
I don't
Paul
think
Newman.
Butler could do it.
I don't think there's really a good person to cast in this. Obviously, Leo in the older age group, Brad Pitt, whatever. But my take is give me Cool Hand Luca. Give me the Luca Guadagnino remake of this movie, because I think the homoeroticism get turned up to 10. And no Armie Hammer though.
I'll give you Brad Pitt in his prime. I'll give you Brad Pitt in his prime.
90s, Thelma and Louise Brad Pitt for sure.
I didn't have any recast for him. I feel like Paul's pretty damn perfect in this role. I went more of I wanted to get rid of the warden. Like I said, he just reminds me of John Voight a little bit too much with his voice. I was thinking a weird time bending thing. What if we took older Dennis Hopper and put him in that role? Like age of him and Speed, and you just throw him in this movie in that role because he's just diabolical as hell in that. So I think that would be fun. Or, if we want to come to the modern times, what about my boy Brian Cox? I think that is a perfect role for him, and he would take that to a next level. So, yeah, I want to replace him for sure, though.
Brian Cox, the GOAT. He's becoming your new Dave Bautista, Cody. Cast him and everything.
It's just he's going to be amazing at everything. So it's an easy pick.
I don't know about Dennis Hopper. Every time I see him, I see Shooter. Split or fly, that's all. Asking for spare change at the diner. That's all I see every time. Dennis Hopper. The local drunk is the basketball wizard, but
true. We need to do Hoosiers soon too, honestly.
Oh, that'd be a good one.
That'd be a fun one.
That's another one I watched and started seeing more things recently when I watched it this year. You see a lot of just my hometown, I'm sure. Or I don't know where you're from, Cody, but I know Corbin's from Westdale, so I'm sure you see the countryside a lot in that film, and it looks the exact same as it still does. But
yeah, I mean, my high school team played in the Hoosier Gym. I think my junior year of high school they went. Maybe my sophomore year.
I got my laps. I got my 5 minutes in the Hoosier Gym in a scrimmage.
Had a kid.
Oh yeah.
I wore the old Frankton Eagles jersey in there at one point in my life.
Cody's a big Indiana basketball guy. He's all over it.
Oh yeah.
Let's jump over to the rating. Last but not least, out of 69.
As you proceed through the poetry in this book, practice this rating method.
I will let you go first, Cody. What do you want to rate this movie?
Oh man, I think I might be the lowest. This was a tough one for me because I do the thing on Letterboxd where I do the gut rating immediately after.
I saw this fluctuate a little bit.
And I had it at 3.5 after the initial watch, and I watched 2 or 3 days ago. So it's been sitting with me for a while. But the next day I just kept thinking more and more about just the nuance of kind of this character and, why he's doing these things. It really made me think about the movie a ton. So that boosted it up a lot for me. Because I do watch a bunch of crap, and if something like the next couple of days I go back and I'm actually thinking about it more, I'm not going to lie, that doesn't happen crazy often anymore. So I think it's a 4-star out of 5 for me. I'm going to go with a 55 out of 69. I think that's mid-tier 4-star. I think Twisters I almost rated the same, so use that as a base point. But yeah, I'll go 55.
Cody, we're very similar. I'm gonna go 56 out of 69, which is also what I gave Twisters. So I feel very strongly.
That's awesome.
This movie, upper tier 4 stars for me. I really did like you said. I watched it last night, so I haven't had as much time to sit with it. But I keep thinking about it and like what it means and what it was trying to say, and just like Paul Newman as a performer, kind of just experiencing him for the first time. It was really cool to see, and I think
He's so good.
Fantastic in this. Ben, what do you want to give this movie?
68.
Hell yeah.
The World
Hell
Shaker and the Earth Maker. That's my.
And just as an update, you did give Paul Blart 33, so you weren't afraid to
Nice.
be harsh on that one.
I gave Paul Blart.
You did.
That is a little low.
Well, Paul Blart's not your King of Queens. Once I became a King of Queens fan. But,
Right. It's not
There.
you know,
It's not prime James, but
and even that has some nostalgia to it.
it's like
but
third tier.
This film's in the glass ceiling. It's in where the glass shelf.
It's on the Mount Rushmore.
I put it in my collection box. Yeah.
Tomato.
Tomato, tomato, tomato. I'm throwing tomatoes.
This is a tough one because I feel like we don't know a lot of Paul Newman movies necessarily, but I wanted to throw out you Paul Rudd movies.
nice.
What do you think, Ben? Could you name couple Paul Rudd
I
movies?
could do that.
Okay, so the name of the game is naming a popular one with a high Rotten Tomato score and then a one with a low Rotten Tomato score. You're trying to get basically high and low. So we'll let you go first, Ben. You can name any Paul Rudd movie.
Go with the two that I can think of. I Love You, Man, and I hate to say it, but Ant-Man. I haven't even watched it.
You want to go the first
I
Ant-Man?
can't think of Paul.
You can
We'll go with the
one.
second one. I feel
Okay.
like maybe the Wasp is a better version, even though I still didn't see it.
right, so I
no,
Love You,
no,
Man.
no. I take it back. I take it back. I Love You, Man. And then the one with Seth Rogen where he knocked up. We'll
So
go
you
with that.
again,
There
you
we go.
want one good and one bad. So do you feel like you've got two goods there, or one? Do you think one of those
then
is
yeah,
bad?
I'm gonna give Ant-Man the bad because I didn't watch it, so I just assume it's bad because I didn't want to watch it.
Okay.
I don't want to watch a guy that's a micro size. I don't care to see that. but
Give him Ant-Man 2 for the bad.
we'll go with that.
Okay, well, Knocked Up has a 90% on Rotten.
Oh wow,
Tomatoes.
that's higher than I thought it'd be. Hell yeah, good comedy.
Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is Ant-Man 2, has an 87%.
Oh wow,
So a little tough there.
that's pretty high for Ant-Man and the Wasp. What's the audience?
79. So audience not as big as fans. Cody, I'll throw to you. What are you picking here, man?
It is tough because Paul Rudd. I'm trying to rack my brain. I don't think he's in like any serious roles in like great movies, even though I think he does have some chops. I think for my high, I would say Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I think that's one of my favorite roles for him for sure.
I wonder if Paul Rudd's ever actually surfed before.
I don't think
That's
so.
my question.
Probably. I mean, he's so rich.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall has an 84%,
84.
Cody.
Yeah. So not that high. Knocked Up's higher, which is surprising to me. But both good comedies.
I'll let you pick your other one. What's your other one?
I mean, I feel like there's a low-hanging fruit. I'm trying to think of other bad Paul Rudd movies. Surely there's some. Because he is in Dinner for Schmucks actually. So I'll pick that. I forgot. I forgot about that one. But some of his early stuff's hit or miss for sure.
That's a 42%. That is what I was gonna pick.
I'm surprised that's not. I mean, I like that movie because I like those kinds of movies, but that's not a very good movie, I don't think. But 42%. I mean, that's respectable for comedies.
I was gonna go Mutant Mayhem for the high. He plays like the gecko in that movie.
I forgot about it. Yeah,
which
he's
is
barely in that.
a 95%. And then is he in? Is it Wet Hot America Summer?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's in that.
Oh yeah.
But that's not that bad, is it?
He's the
I feel like it's probably
cool guy
lower
in that
than-
one.
Quantum Mania is probably they're probably.
I
similar.
thought about that. So Wet Hot American Summer is 39%. So
How is Dinner for
That's
Schmucks
the one.
higher? That doesn't. Rotten Tomatoes sucks, dude. Terrible system.
he's obviously been in a ton of movies. So I'll just very quickly run through some highs and lows I hear. Quantumania is a 46%.
bad.
So it could have won me the game regardless. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, 42%. Bad
That's a good
movie.
one. I would have never thought of.
Afterlife, Ghostbusters is a 63. Obviously, you got a ton of Avengers and whatnot. Endgame is a 94.
Civil War.
Anchorman
Yeah, I mean,
274, not that great.
Yeah.
Perks of Being a Wallflower, 85%.
That's a good one. That's probably one of his more dramatic ones. Yeah, that's a good poll.
Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, is a 74%. He's in the
That's
first
bad.
Night at the Museum, I guess. That's a 42%.
They have a Chevy Cruise driving in the Dewey Cox film. Because it's like staged in what, like the 60s? You can see a Chevy Cruise driving through in the
Yeah,
background
he
at
is.
one
I
point.
forgot that he was in Night at the Museum. He plays. Yeah. Oh man, that just gave me flashbacks right there. That's funny. He's
Halloween,
really
The
young in
Curse of
that.
Michael Myers has an 8%. He's
I
in
saw that too for Coached Over. Oh, I should have said that. That movie is god awful.
Oh,
Do not watch that.
he's the one that said the chili penguin thing in the Night at the Museum, right? He's the stepdad.
Yep. Yep. The kid. He's a dick.
Penguin. Chili penguin. Yeah.
And then what's the last one? The Idiot Brother movie. What's that? Do you guys know what I'm talking
I
about?
think My Idiot Brother is he.
Yeah.
He's the idiot brother with like long hair or something.
Our Idiot Brother is what it's called. And that has a 70%. Holy shit. That's
wow.
crazy. Well,
Maybe
that's been tomato.
dramatic.
I won. Now we move on. Last but not least, weekly watches. What have we been into?
How's the movie?
What movie?
What have we been watching? Ben, I'll throw it to you. Has there been anything you've been interested in? Anything you want to plug?
Oh, I've developed an addiction to ghosts. That's probably
me
the
more.
top of my list. I don't know why I love it so much. It's a show about you get a variety of a blues singer, a man from the Revolution, a Viking, an Indian, a Girl Scout troop leader who had an arrow shot through his neck, and he's the most polite one out of them all. But it's a sitcom with all of this melting pot of different historical figures, but they're really just regular people, I guess. And for the history buff in me, it's a good sitcom to sit down and watch. It's enjoyable. It gives me that feeling that like King of Queens or Everybody Loves Raymond gives me. Also watched Landman lately, the new
Mhm.
Billy Bob Thornton, Bill Rig, and that
Taylor Sheridan.
boy,
show?
that has some big what the fuck just happened moments. I'm not gonna even
seen a
get
lot of
close to
clips.
spoiling any. It was good. It's one of his better ones. It was better than Bass Reeves, in my opinion. But I just watched Gladiator 2 the other day, and I like the first, like a lot of films right now, I like the first hour, maybe 75 minutes, and then
Movie's
the
long.
last bit of it's just rushed up, They rush it up. They rushed the ending up. The fight scene with Denzel Washington was kind of rushed, but it wasn't bad. The only other I watched Nosferatu and I hated it. I thought it had nothing to do with vampires. I think more of a weird, fucked up
true.
love story, in my opinion, and I think it shit on the original 1922 version. And Werner Herzog still probably holds the record for the best Nosferatu film, even though I still haven't watched it. But it's got Klaus Kinski in it. That guy was a madman. It has to be good.
And
But
Isabel Angiani.
go around Europe claiming he was Jesus Christ, and just argue with people. But the last movie I want to mention is it's from 2007. It might be the only movie Kevin James and Ray Romano have ever been in together, and they're meatpacking salesmen. It's called Grifted. And it's just you get the comedy of the two in it. It's a terrible movie, but if you're a fan of those guys, you'll enjoy it.
I'll have to add that to my list.
Mets super fan Kevin James. Classic.
Shout out.
Cody, what have you been into, man? I see a lot of ads for Ghosts before Survivor episodes. So
Yeah, I was gonna say
that's
that.
what I know about that.
They've actually done a thing recent in the last season of Survivor where right before it comes back to Survivor, there's a Ghosts commercial and they're watching Survivor, like making comments about it. So I feel like I've seen that show without even watching an episode, and it's funny from the ads. Some other stuff. I mean, it's been what, like a month since we recorded Corbin, so I've actually seen a ton of shit. I won't go through it all. The only time I've been to the theater really recently was for Captain America: Brave New World, which we may do a mini review on. Probably not. Hopefully not. But I just didn't really like it. I think, obviously the lead, Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, I think he's great. But just the story's really bad. All the Hulk stuff I just hated. I guess spoiler alert, but who gives a fuck at this point? Just the leaders look terrible. He's on a green screen the entire time. I think one of the worst villains in MCU history, and they've been pumping him out recently. So I didn't really enjoy that. But a bunch of other crap I've been watching other than that. First off, TV wise too, I actually finally binged like the last 2 seasons of Abbott Elementary, which I really enjoy that show. It did take a while for the relationship with Janine and
Gregory.
Mr. Gregorio to bounce off, but I thought they landed it
Chris.
pretty well. And the fourth season was probably my favorite of the four as well. So excited. There's probably a new season coming out sometime soon.
Well, like it's actively airing right now on Hulu. So
there you go. Shout out to
you might have you. Where did you watch it?
I was watching on Hulu.
So you probably watched like just up until the point.
Maybe.
It's still coming out though.
Off the check, there's probably a couple new episodes waiting for me, which is fun.
Probably.
Other than that,
she's very impressive.
Quinta Brunson.
That's her baby. Yeah.
Yep, she created it too, which is awesome. She's on SNL 50, which I also checked out and I thought was really fun. And then a bunch of other random crap. I've been checking out different directors. Watched the first two from Kevin Smith with Clerks and Mallrats. Clerks I actually really, really like. Just like the dialogue, I think is maybe the best he's ever done, and I've only seen a couple
Black
of
and white
movies. Yeah, Mallrats not as good, but Jason Lee is fun, and I had a good time with it. Also, I've been binging Tarantino movies. Watched Pulp Fiction. Watched Jackie Brown for the first time. Watched Kill Bill. I mean, Pulp Fiction's in my top, 30, 40 movies of all time easily. Jackie Brown surprised me a ton, actually. I really enjoyed that. Some of like people he doesn't work with as much. De Niro's super fun in it. Kind of like the main love couple. I don't really know them at all, but I thought they were probably the best in the whole movie. So I'd recommend that highly. And then last couple of things I watched, Good Time. I rewatched that kind of just to bring it up because I know Corbin's a hater of it. But God, Rob Pat is a madman in that movie. I think that is my favorite performance of him leading up to Mickey 17. So we'll see if he can break that. And then lastly, I did check out Speed as well, which is interesting timing with the whole Dennis Hopper, talking about him today. But I was a little bit disappointed in the rewatch of that. You got the action scenes that everybody knows, but them jumping over the bridge this time, I was like, that doesn't really make sense. And then Sandra Bullock over time, I think I've just become less of a fan of. So I think her charisma didn't catch me as much as kind of previous watches, but that's about half of it too, because we're doing another episode here this week, so I'll keep going in that one. But a lot of fun stuff.
Love all that, Cody. Saw some things in theaters. Paddington, Peru, definitely the weakest of the Paddington series. To me, it's kind of fan fiction Paddington, not really leaving up to what Paul King created.
Yeah, he didn't direct this one, right?
Nah, just some other random dude. Let me pull the name here real quick. Dougal Wilson, director of Paddington in Peru.
Shout out Dougal.
Olivia Colman's there, kind of wasted. Antonio Banderas is there playing like, I don't know, like he's in Jungle Cruise or something. It's very strange. Not great. Also didn't really love The Monkey or Love Hurts or Captain America Brave New World. A lot of junk in theaters right now that I'm just not having a great time with. But we're seeing them and we're going to the theater, eating our popcorn, trying the best to have a good time in life. I did see Last Breath, which is an interesting movie starring Woody Harrelson and Simu Liu. It is an adaptation of a 2019 documentary directed by Alex Parkinson. Both the documentary and this narrative feature film are both directed by Alex Parkinson. And I did the AMC like screen unseen thing where they like the Monday, 3 days before the movie comes out or whatever, they show it to you, but they don't tell you what they're showing. But I enjoyed the movie. Very like harrowing situations about a deep sea oil repair divers. And one of them like basically gets trapped underwater for a very extended period of time without oxygen. Shot underwater, like I said, it was made by the guy who made the documentary on it. So like a lot of the same real like equipment and footage, plus Cliff Curtis like on green screen as the captain yelling a bunch. So I actually did enjoy it. There was some like crazy stuff near the end that I don't really want to spoil, that just was like, these people are all sociopaths that are doing this, but I guess you kind of have to be that kind of oil rig worker a little bit. And then on top of that, just keep grinding out New movies, Neja 2, this Chinese box office sensation, taking the world by storm. Been watching some early Spielberg stuff, 1941. Bad movie, might be his worst movie that I've ever seen. Spielberg can't do comedy.
He's done a lot.
The big takeaway.
Yeah. I've seen some bad from him for sure.
That's pretty much most of what I've been watching. I've been watching Abbott Elementary as well. Finished Twin Peaks, I think, like I said, the first 2 seasons of that since we had our last episode, but gonna need to do a little bit of last minute 2024 watching before we record our best of the year episode next.
Stay tuned for that. I think that one's gonna be a fun one, obviously, but I should catch up on some things, but I probably won't. So stay tuned and find out.
Ben, it's been a pleasure to have you back again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming back on.
We will not wait 2 years or 2.5 years to have you back on the show again before. Any final things you want to plug or last things you want to say?
Yes. Cody, you talked about Kevin Smith. Watch Tusk and then get back with me if you want to have nightmares. If you don't want to have nightmares, don't watch it. But
it's on the list.
A man gets turned into a walrus. That's all I'm going to give you. A man gets
Justin Long.
Walrus.
Sounds fun. Can't wait.
Terrifying. I heard a story about how a guy's fingers got replaced with his toes, and that's my new worst nightmare. And I'm going to end you guys with that. Thank you for having me. Just keep that image in your head now. I'm glad I get to share it with more people. But yeah, that's my worst fear. But
full circle
right,
from the toes in Mountain Ben to the man who had toes on his fingers. Ben, it's been a pleasure. Benny Franklin.
It's good talking.
As always.
What you've just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.